I, Piyush Singh, with my co-host Aparajita Singh, welcome you to this program where Mr. Prakash Singh's book, The Struggle for Police Reforms in India, is going to be launched by Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu. I'm just going to read a sentence from 1902-1903. The police force is far from efficient. It has utterly failed to secure the confidence and cordial cooperation of the people. This is the Police Commission report of 1902-1903, instituted by Lord Curzon. 94 years later, Mr. Prakash Singh, as you know, filed a public interest litigation soon after his retirement in 1996 for changes in the police with a view of making it more accountable and more people-friendly. The PIL dragged on in the Supreme Court for 10 years. In hindsight, seems very short. But at the end of it, the Supreme Court gave a historic judgment in 2006, accepting all the prayers which Mr. Prakash Singh had made in the petition. The book documents the tremendous efforts put in by Mr. Prakash Singh, my proud father, initially to get a favorable judgment from the Supreme Court and later to get the judicial directions implemented. It has been 16 years that the Supreme Court has been monitoring the implementation of its directions. There's been some movement forward, albeit at a slower pace, but at the ground level, unfortunately, not much change is seen. Vested interests, which are very formidable, have made every effort to delay and even sabotage the implementation of the judicial directions. My father, Mr. Prakash Singh, like a true warrior, has nevertheless been pursuing the matter relentlessly. It is remarkable that he has, for the last 26 years, pursued the objective with great determination without losing hope. It is a tribute to his commitment to the cause. It has been his dream to see the transformational changes in the police, changes which would transform the present rulers' police into people's police. The book, which may be described as Mr. Prakash Singh's magnum opus, captures his struggle to bring about police reforms in the country. We will just now wait for the Honorable Vice President to arrive to get this program going. The Honorable Vice President has arrived. May I request you all to welcome him by standing up at your places. The National Anthem would be played as a mark of respect to the Honorable Vice President.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
May I now request Mr. N. Ramachandran, President of the Indian Police Foundation, to give his welcome address. The Indian Police Foundation has been working for comprehensive reforms in the functioning of the police so as to make it uphold the rule of law in a manner which inspires confidence among the people. Mr. Ramachandran.
I think I will take off the mask. Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you to this event being jointly organized by Rupa Publications, Common Cause, and the Indian Police Foundation. We are deeply honored and immensely happy to have Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji, as our chief guest today. Sir, you have been a consistent source of support to the Indian Police Foundation right from the beginning. And you have, on many occasions, spoken very clearly and very strongly in favor of good governance and good policing and reforms in the police. You have spoken about the need to insulate the police from extraneous influences and about the need to ensure functional autonomy of the police together with accountability and transparency. So we are greatly delighted and truly honored to truly blessed by your presence, and we are indeed thankful that you very graciously consented to release Prakash Singh ji's book today. It is my immense honor and privilege to extend a warm welcome to you, sir, on behalf of the organizers and also on behalf of everyone present here. We also respectfully greet Prakash Singh ji, who is the chairman of the Indian Police Foundation, and of course the author of the book being released today. As we are all aware, Prakash Singh ji has been the face of the police reform movement in the country. While congratulating him on his new book, we also welcome him very warmly to today's function. Among our speakers, we have Shri Vipul Mudgal, Director of Common Cause. He has been himself a crusader for reforms, especially in the police, and we welcome him. I welcome Shri Kaushik Deka, the Executive Editor of India Today, author, journalist, and he has been a very talented chronicler of our times. I have great pleasure in welcoming Shri N.K. Singh, who has been one of the tall and fearless police leaders of our country. As we all know, Shri N.K. Singh, along with Shri Prakash Singh, were co-petitioners of the PIL for police reforms that was filed before the Supreme Court of India in 1996. N.K. Singh, sir, I'm very happy to see you here, and we very warmly welcome you here. Prakash Singh ji's book is being published by Rupa Publications, and I very warmly extend a very warm welcome to Shri Kapish Mehra, the Managing Director. We acknowledge the presence of several very eminent persons here. We have DGPs, Chiefs of Police, very senior police officers, civil servants, people from the legal fraternity, media, academicians. So many distinguished persons are there. It's difficult to name every one of them. So we are truly honored by your presence here. Ladies and gentlemen, I extend a very warm welcome to every one of you present here, and also those who are watching this event online on various social media platforms. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
May I now request Mr. Vipul Mudgal, Director of Common Cause, to say a few words. The Common Cause has made significant contribution to the cause of police reforms by bringing out excellent studies on the status of policing in India. It has also, on various occasions, helped the Indian Police Foundation in carrying out its programs and activities. Mr. Vipul Mudgal.
Thank you. Honorable Vice President of India, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu ji, and friends. It's a privilege for me, on behalf of Common Cause, to be welcoming you at this august gathering today. Common Cause works for the rule of law and integrity of institutions, and many of you would know some of our PIL's, public interest litigation, done for probity in public life. We have also made a lot of enemies and a lot more friends in the process. Police reforms is also a part of that activity. It's a portfolio of activities of Common Cause. Common Cause and CSDS, Center for the Study of Developing Societies, bring out together a report which is called the Status of Policing in India report, which is about the citizens' trust in police, citizens' satisfaction from their police, the working conditions of police personnel, the attitudes of police. There are a lot of things which only an independent organization can do. There are many other things which police themselves do, some splendid research on policing, but an independent organization can do it very differently. So we are very proud to be doing that kind of statistical work, and we are completely aware of the anxieties of the state and the anxieties of the police, but at the same time, we do it on behalf of the citizens. As a civil society organizations, they look at things very differently. As a civil society organization, we believe that it's not just a matter of making the police effective. We believe that effective is the objective with which we bring out our reports, and we are very proud to be partnering Indian Police Foundation and many other organizations in this effort. So we also believe that the cause of police reform should be everybody's business. It should not be the business of only retired police officers or very few people among the politicians. It should be the academic organizations, the religious organizations, the panchayats, the common people, shopkeepers, universities, everybody. Police reforms, if we want India to become a superpower. We all have ambitions. Countries also have ambitions. We want to become a developed country. We cannot become a forward nation, a developed country, a superpower with an antiquated and brutal police force. That I can give you in writing. Other things will probably change, but this will not. And Mr. Prakash Singh has been bringing this out for a long time. Whatever I've read in the book, I absolutely salute to sir I mean, it's written with like complete integrity and with so much knowledge that I felt that it's written by Professor Prakash Singh, who's a sociologist and a political scientist, and not, a retired police officer. And there are so many things in the book that when you start reading, you realize that, it's a book of solutions. It's a book of history. There's no single book in India, and we have been doing a lot of work on this. We've been putting together literature surveys on whatever work has been done, different committees, their recommendations, etc., etc. And in fact, some of the things that Mr. Prakash Singh talks about are, things which were said in 1905 and 10, which are still relevant. I mean, what are we talking about? Where are we headed? I would just quote a small passage from his books, if I have the permission. He talks about his 35 years in the service, and once again, forthright, honest, and straight. And I quote, and he's talking about those politicians who try to control the police and those police officers who swim with the current, And I quote, those considered loyal to the party in power were given key assignments. Those whose loyalties were suspect usually found themselves on inconsequential assignments, irrespective of their merit and professional competence. This, I felt, was not a healthy state of affairs. I was convinced that the serving officers should be loyal to laws of the land and the constitution of the country, and that they should, under all circumstances, uphold the rule of law. The book does not spare anybody. You would see references to former prime ministers, successive prime ministers. You would see Supreme Court judges. You would see even Supreme Court Chief Justices of India, very politely, very firmly, without any malice, very, very simply written book. And I think everybody who's interested in the cause of police reforms should read this book. In my view, the most important part of the book is not the petition or the judgment. The petition is a landmark petition. All lawyers, I know a lot of lawyers are present here. All lawyers would like to see how beautifully a petition can be written and argued. It is, every small point has been argued beautifully. It's a model petition for students of law. And the judgment is absolutely momentous judgment. It's a landmark judgment. But at the same time, to me, it's not the petition and the judgment which is the center kernel of the book. The real important part of the book is the struggle for the police reforms in India. And you would see that he has chronicled a lot of things which probably coming generations will talk about. And that struggle, my friends, is still going on. And we have to carry on this struggle. I'm very proud to be associated with the Indian Police Foundation as a partner organization with Common Cause. And Mr. Prakash Singh is still a leading light of that fight. And let me say on behalf of my organization that we are proud to be participants in this struggle to make the police force more effective, more sensitive, and above all, more accountable. Thank you.
I would now request Mr. Kaushik Deka, Executive Editor, India Today, to say a few words. Mr. Deka is one of the foremost journalists of the country. His articles in India Today, covering a wide range of subjects, have always been brilliant and incisive. Mr. Kaushik Deka.
Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu, former Judge of Supreme Court, I believe he is not present here, G.S. Singhvi ji, President of India Police Foundation, Shri N. Ramachandran, Director of Common Cause, Shri Vipul Mudgal, star of this morning and the author and one of India's most celebrated IPS officer, Prakash Singh ji, and another celebrated IPS officer, N.K. Singh ji, and distinguished guest, a very good morning. I'm not an expert to speak about police reforms or anything related to police. I'm a journalist, so I will say things that I have observed as a journalist. I'm just an observer. And I'll start with my childhood, because my first experience with police forces was when I was growing up as a child of a doctor in a small town in Assam, where the cops always needed the doctor for certificates. So I had the privilege. Every single cop will come to me, pamper me with chocolates. If my mother and I would be late for a film or a theater, they would escort us back home. So it was a fantastic experience. Later, I met several Assam police officers, and in Assam, most police officers are writers, poets, filmmakers, dramatists, and they're very soft people. So when I was in college, I myself had my share of star status, so I was connected to all those police officers. In fact, I got married because two DGPs, one former DGP of Goa and former DGP of Assam, they both gave an excellent character certificate of mine to my father-in-law. So I'm very thankful to police forces. But I had seen the darker side also when I was a child, and Assam agitation, you all know, when it was going around, I saw KPS Gill one night coming down and tracing a deaf and dumb boy who actually jumped into a drain, seeing a police van, because he was terribly scared. And thankfully, my father could save the boy in the nick of time. He knew KPS Gill at that time. And then some years back, in 2017, I was grilled for 8 hours by Assam police for saying that Bihu is a festival of love and, of course, lust. So, and that time the DGP of Assam was one of my favorites, Kula Soikia sir, who actually helped me getting married. Having said all this, currently, if we look at the police forces, my state police force, I'm mentioning Assam again and again, but recently we saw Assam police arresting one Gujarat MLA. Within 24 hours, they traveled 2,000 miles and they arrested the MLA within 24 hours of filing the FIR. What a speed. Means we all blame police forces for being very slow. Then we saw the highway drama recently in Kurukshetra. And the second episode is unraveling, but among all this, the saddest story was one 13-year-old girl coming to a police station seeking justice against her, against those people who gang raped her, and the SHO raped her again. In these circumstances, in this environment, Prakash Singh's book, this struggle for police reforms, it's a very timely reminder to the police forces on what they exactly should do. We have seen all those things. Prakash Singh ji, he was actually referred by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh ji as an icon, and this reminder has come from an icon. So I believe the police forces will take note of this. And in this book, the author starts with a very somber note. He says, he actually outlines the purpose of the police force. Police should be people-friendly, and it should inspire confidence among all sections of society as the protector of their lives, property, and honor. And then he goes on to say what the current status is. A symbiotic relationship has developed between the politicians and policemen, wherein the politicians use, misuse, and abuse the police for their partisan ends. And no wonder the book has reported that 3 out of 5 policemen, they say that they get transferred if they don't listen to or comply with external pressures. And we know where the external pressure is coming from. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2004 enunciated the concept of smart police, and he meant the police should be strict and sensitive, modern and mobile, alert and accountable, reliable and responsible, and techno-savvy and trained. 5 years ago, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had said, we need new age policemen who is more professional, better motivated, suitably empowered, well-trained, and who places greater emphasis on technology for investigation and other tasks. And in 2006, thanks to Prakash Singh's efforts, long efforts, we saw the Supreme Court sending directives to the states for police reforms, and we don't see, and if you ask me as a journalist, I don't see much happening on the ground. Yes, there have been some reforms, some steps have been taken by some states, but things remain the same on the ground. Especially, for people who are poor or women, or the sections which actually have suffered mostly in the hands of police. And many people would say that police force, I may be pardoned for using this word, but the policing in India, it has almost become a joke. Political interferences have become blatant. The lack of infrastructure and adverse working conditions are crippling the efficiency of the police forces in the country, and that's the bitter truth. And the book will open you to some very horrifying facts. The police in India work at 77% of its sanctioned strength, or just 3/4 of its required capacity. Almost everyone is working 14 hours a day on an average. 3 out of 4 personnel believe that their workload is affecting their physical and mental health, and we can see that in their behavioral pattern. And there is no training for policemen. When top officers may get trained, but if we talk about the constables that we met, that I used to meet in my childhood, they don't get any training, and that's why they are so well equipped and ill-mannered, if we can say so. And funnily, 214 police stations in India, they don't have access to telephones, and 240 police stations don't have vehicles, and we are expecting them to bust crimes. While improving these basic infrastructural facilities will require political will, what I found fascinating in the book is that the acceptance of the fact that the zeal for reform must come from within the police force. And in a letter to the police force, the author, he wrote to his colleagues, he says that there are many aspects of police functioning which could be improved by your personal initiative and interest. You should do whatever is possible within the existing framework. These may appear small matters to you, but in front of the point of view of the people, they are very important. And we should all remember the last line, that the small things actually make the bigger differences. And to achieve these objectives, he has even offered a 5-point prescription for internal reforms on how police should receive a complaint, how they should behave, how they should report cases, how they should treat women, tribals, Dalits or scheduled caste, and the poor, and above all, how they should uphold the rule of law. Now, upholding the rule of law is easier said than done. As we criticize the criminal justice system, which is on the verge of collapse in India with a very slow judicial process and ever-increasing workload, policemen are often finding shortcuts to combat crime. The book reveals that 1 out of 5 police personnel feel that killing a dangerous criminal is a better way than a legal trial. Now, I can see that happening in my home state Assam and in many states, where encounter has become a very popular mode of delivering instant justice and often backed by political establishment. We can keep blaming the politicians, but there is a very important observation in the book, how 2 national former security advisors, one current, one former, and they were cops themselves, did very little to initiate police reforms. One even scuttled the author's attempt to meet former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. He wanted to plead for police reforms. Let me refrain from revealing much about the book, but this is an indicator how this book provides a 360-degree perspective on this intriguing issue of police reforms. But before I conclude, what I expect means we all talk about crime busting by police, which is the primary job. But most of the time, as I was speaking to an IPS officer in Assam, he said that the government, the data may be wrong, but the government spends approximately 12 lakh on every IPS officer. But we should also find out how much the government spends on the constable, who is at the lowest end and who is the first respondent in most cases. Because what I expect as a journalist, as a citizen of India, is that the constable who used to pamper me with chocolates or he used to escort us back home, he should not be doing all that. He should be earning a very decent salary, a dignity, so that a meritorious person can aspire in every state that I would become a constable. He should be given that dignity. He should have decent working hours. And when he busts crimes, he should be well trained. And when he detects a crime or does something, the credit should go to him. Most of the time, he is always standing behind. So if that happens, I believe instead of doing chores or saluting top officers or collecting hafta, they will get the respect of an officer, and that will be, I believe, the biggest police reforms, instead of being ridiculed as the tullah. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak.
I would now request Mr. Prakash Singh, author of the book, to say a few words. Mr. Singh is the only officer today who can claim to have commanded India's largest police force, the UP Police, and also the world's largest border guarding force, the Border Security Force. He also led Assam Police. A living legend, he has devoted his post-retirement life, almost 3 decades, to single-handedly fighting for police reforms in the country. Mr. Prakash Singh.
Honorable Vice President, sir, I'm really grateful to you for having come here to release my book, The Struggle for Police Reforms in India. Struggle. Yes, it has been a long struggle. When soon after retirement, I decided to approach the Supreme Court for police reforms, having exhausted all other means while in service. I thought this would be just a 5 or 6 year struggle, and by the end of it, we would know where we stand. But it has dragged on and on. It took 10 years to get a judgment from the Supreme Court, another 15 years struggling to get the judicial directions implemented. And the end is not in sight. At the very beginning, if somebody had told me that, look, this is not going to end even in your lifetime, maybe I would not have started, not embarked on the project. But having initiated the movement, having struggled that long, I mean, my nature being what it is, I just can't leave a thing halfway, especially when I'm convinced about its legitimacy, its need, and its relevance. So it had to be continued, and so the struggle goes on. Not that it has been a fruitless struggle. In 2006, we got a landmark judgment from the Supreme Court, and that judgment will remain part of constitutional history, part of police history. Whenever the history of police is written, that judgment would be permanently there as some kind of a base for initiating changes in the police. Now, the Supreme Court had given directions, but the states have been unfortunately averse to implementing them, because the political class, unfortunately, and also the bureaucracy, they want the status quo to continue because it suits them, which is very, very unfortunate. Now, what have been the gains? One, of course, as I said, was the landmark Supreme Court judgment. Apart from that, I would say we have been able to arouse public consciousness about the need for police reforms in the country. I remember a batchmate of mine telling me, who joined politics and became a minister in one of the South Indian states. He told me that, Prakash, you may not be aware that your judgment is being mentioned even during election speeches. I was quite surprised to hear that. And he quoted a speaker as sort of haranguing the audience and saying that, look, if we come to power, we'll introduce Prakash Singh judgment and this, that. Probably the speaker himself didn't know what the judgment was, but this was one of the election speeches in one of the South Indian states, the undivided Andhra, to be precise. So, I mean, the public consciousness has been aroused, and whenever something goes wrong on the law and order front, we find that people talking about police reforms on the social media as to why this judgment is not being implemented. The media has also taken up the matter, and of course they take it up by fits and starts, because the media tells me when I keep on reminding them to raise the issue of reforms, they say, sir, this is not a very sexy subject. We can't be talking about it all the time. So yes, it may not be sexy, but it is very relevant for our existence because it concerns our life, our property, our honor. And police functioning is it's a functioning which affects our daily lives. It affects our daily lives. If nothing else, you are always facing the traffic constable. And imagine a situation where the police enforces the rule of law, becomes people friendly. I sometimes wonder, you see, we have 26,000 police stations and outposts spread across the country. Sometimes I wonder at what potential are we working? There has been no study of it, but my gut feeling is that we are working at hardly 40% of our potential. Imagine if this force starts working at 80% of its potential. What a difference it would make. Imagine if this force becomes people friendly. We have the largest police force in the world, taking the entire strength of the country. If this force becomes people friendly and if it starts enforcing the rule of law, it will become, some kind of paradise may be a very strong term, but a society where we would all be happy, comfortable, and mentally at ease that yes, whatever be the dispensation, the police would be doing its job. Another gain has been that even at the political level, there has been some recognition of the fact that police reforms are needed, although it is half-hearted, it is grudging, but it is there. Some political parties have included police reforms in their agenda. It's another thing that after being voted to power, they forget it, but it is there on the agenda, and the mere fact that they have included it in their agenda is at least a step forward. And I think willy-nilly one day they would take up the police reforms also. The Prime Minister himself initiated the concept of smart policing referred to by Kaushik Deka, and it's an excellent concept. I only wish it had been pursued to its logical conclusion. We have an arrangement where the states are responsible for implementing these directions. So, we can't blame the center also beyond a certain limit. It's the responsibility of the states. And the states are definitely, not inclined to implement police reforms because the majority of chief ministers, I'm sorry to admit that, they have a feudal mindset. The majority of chief ministers, very few have that sense of enlightenment and that sense that yes, police should be a modern progressive force. Why did I write this book? You see, after this continuing struggle over more than 2 decades, and it's now 25 years, I felt that I'm not going to see the conclusion of this struggle in my lifetime. So I thought I must document all that has happened during the last 25 years, all the effort has gone into it, so that whosoever takes up, of course the Indian Police Foundation has already taken it up. They know how much of road we have traversed and how much more remains to be covered and what all objective needs to be, the way the objective should be pursued. In fact, in the last chapter, I have said that the last chapter is named The Way Ahead, and in which I have divided in 3 parts. There are certain, what I say, low-hanging fruits. There are aspects of police reforms which would not generate any political opposition. Why don't we start with those low-hanging fruits? Increasing manpower. No politician would object to it. Improving infrastructure, giving more transport, better communications, more forensic laboratories. No politician is going to object to these. So why can't we start with the low-hanging fruits, at least in terms of equipment, in terms of resources? We give police what it needs. Today, if you go to rural areas, the most ramshackle building would probably be the police station. Even at the district headquarters, the superintendents of police, there is some improvement now, and some states, Haryana has done a lot of good work, but in UP still the superintendent police office is ठीक है, चलता है, किसी तरह से काम हो रहा है वहाँ पे. कलेक्टर साहब का दफ्तर देखिए तो शानदार है. So, these things, these absurdities can go, and no politician is going to oppose these these progressive measures. I mean, better housing for policemen. I remember only a few years back, the Times of India carried an article about Delhi police. The Delhi police living conditions were, he compared it to a slum, and he painted a very graphic picture of Delhi police. If this is the state of Delhi police, what would be happening to police in remote parts of the country can well be imagined. So, I mean, there are a whole lot of subjects and issues which can be taken up and which would not generate any political opposition. Let us start with that. As I say, the low-hanging fruits. So, I mean, as I said, I wrote this book because I thought this should provide the basis and the information which the next generation will find useful to carry forward the struggle. That was the main purpose of writing this book. Now, the last point, why must we have police reforms? Why do we need police reforms after all? Now, this is a subject on which I could go on for an hour, but within the next 3 minutes I'll summarize. Look, if you want better law and order in the country, you must have police reforms. I mean, look at the kind of charade going on. I mean, 3 state polices are working at cross purposes on an issue. I mean, it's a joke. What is this happening? And this joke has to stop. One state police arresting, another police arresting the policeman of that state, and then somebody rescuing. I mean, it's such a such a disgusting state of affairs. So, if the law and order of the country has to improve, we must have police reform. Secondly, internal security. Now, why is it that we are not able to deal with Maoist rebellions? Why is it that we are not able to liquidate the northeastern insurgencies? Why is it that the Kashmir separatist movement is continuing? Yes, reasons may be essentially political, but another very strong reason is that we don't have a professional police to tackle these challenges. And the state polices are very conveniently, they say that, oh, this is the centrist baby. It is not the centrist baby, it is your baby. If we have a professional police force, well armed, well equipped, well officered, well motivated, there is no reason these Maoist rebellion in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, it should be possible to finish them within another 4 or 5 years. Of course, with political backup and with adequate socio-economic measures. In the state of Terai, I mean, there was a serious terrorist movement, and we were able to finish that within two years. And it was a very major terrorist threat at that time in UP, but the speed and the effectiveness with which it was tackled made people think that probably it was a very simple affair. So, I mean, if you deal with the problem effectively, they would say it was a simple affair. It was not a simple affair. If you ask officers who served in that area at that time, then I would say the economic progress of the country. I mean, we are very proud of the economic progress that we have achieved, and we are in the process of achieving. But let me emphasize that you can have sound economic progress only with good law and order. Nobody would like to invest his money and millions or billions in a state where he's not guaranteed of returns, or where he suspects that the establishment may be overrun by the trade union and the factory may be burned down, or there may be strikes, or the manager or his daughter may be kidnapped. Nobody would like to invest his money in such a state. So, if you want sound economic progress, there is no getting away from good law and order. The last point, even I'm not hesitant to say that if we do not introduce police reform, sir, we will see one day the collapse of the democratic structure. I mean, the way undesirable elements, I'm using a very polite expression, are gradually entering the parliaments and the legislatures. People whom we would like to see behind bars than having to salute them as we have to. And that is possible only when you insulate police from outside influences and you allow it to function where they think they can enforce the rule of law without incurring any risks. Once that happens, then alone these men would be put in their right places. And then alone the future of democracy would be guaranteed. Today, sir, 43% of the men, according to Association of Democratic Reforms in the parliament, have questionable background. It's a very serious number, and the alarming and the disturbing fact is that this percentage has been steadily going up during the last 2 decades. It started from 23, 30, and now it is 43. I mean, the day it crosses 50, I don't know how the world would look at us. So, whichever way you look at it, whether you want good law and order, whether you want effective tackling of internal security situations, whether you want assured economic progress, whether you want the future of democracy to be safeguarded, whichever way you look at it, there is no getting away from having a healthy, professional police force accountable to the people, upholding the rule of law under all circumstances, irrespective of the party in power. In fact, as I say, India's future is linked with police reforms. If we do not introduce police reforms, the future would have a question mark. I would like to conclude with reading a few lines from my book, which these figure in the last paragraph. Police reforms in the country actually represent a historical process. There are periods in history, as Sri Aurobindo said, when the unseen power that guides its destinies seems to be filled with a consuming passion for change and a strong impatience of the old. There is already a strong impatience in the country with the colonial police structure. The desire for change is also there, but it has yet to assume the characteristics of a consuming passion. Hopefully that day should not be far. The process which has been set in motion shall meanwhile move inexorably until the transformational changes which will provide the foundations for a progressive modern India are carried out. Thank you.
I would now request the Honorable Vice President Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji to kindly release the book. Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji was President of the Bharatiya Janata Party from 2002 to 2004 and was later elected as Vice President of the country in 2017. A frontline leader of the BJP, he is widely respected for his fair and balanced views on various subjects. May I now request the Honorable Vice President ji to bless us all with his words of wisdom. I must say my most memorable speech from a politician has been from Venkaiah Naidu ji in Chicago. Honorable Vice President ji.
I'm no more in politics, don't expect any memorable speeches. Retired from politics, but not retired from public life. That's why I meet people, I go to conferences, and also try to meet the younger generation and try to motivate them, give some. People. Spending time with the people is my favorite pastime. I used to do it more effectively, and I was not in this constitutional responsibility, but now this constitutional responsibility, it has some protocols, some other restrictions, of course. They are there. My dear friends, Shri Prakash Singh ji, Ramachandran ji, Kaushik Dekha, Vipul Mutkal, Shri N.K. Singh ji, and the publisher Shri Kapish Mehra, distinguished people who have all made it to come to this important book release function, and my dear sisters and brothers. I am really delighted to release the book, The Struggle for Police Reforms in India, written by Shri Prakash Singh ji. He has served the country with distinction. The moment I received the letter, I had no hesitation to accept this invitation and also to come out to this function. Police reforms is a highly important and sensitive subject.
for that matter, any reform. The Prime Minister gave a 3-line mantra, and I often quote it to remind everybody, including the government, of course. Reform, perform, and transform. Transformation of the nation. Transformation of the people's lives. Transform it into a better society. Transformation to get happiness. Comfort, happiness. So you need to bring reforms. This is a basic organization. You need to bring reforms. You need to bring judicial reforms. You need to bring legal reforms. You need to bring administrative reforms. You need to bring electoral reforms. Electoral reforms also, you see what is happening in Parliament. Prakash Singh was mentioning about some report. I don't think it's accurate, 43% or whatever it is, because I have been in the legislature for the last 19 years in Parliament and also for a decade in the Legislative Assembly. There are a couple of people who are having criminal cases, but as those cases are dragging on for years together and conviction is not taking place and rejection by the people is not taking place, so often people's perception is that most of the politicians are criminals. I made some study and then found that you violate 144, you participate in an Andolan, there are cases against you also. You can count those cases. But I am not trying to undermine. Yes, there are very serious corruption, a very serious case. Corruption is a very serious case. Murder, molestation, where there is moral turpitude involved, that is more objectionable and that is more serious. And it has to be taken note by all the concerned. One, reform the system. Second is, what is required is a political will, then followed by administrative skill. Then you can go for anything. So political will is lacking undoubtedly at various levels. That's why in spite of the matter being taken to Supreme Court and Supreme Court giving a clear-cut judgment also, many of the states have not taken up reforms because we are all aware policing is a state subject. I am not trying to absolve central government. Yes, center also has certain duty. That's why in Parliament also when we try to discuss, some people say, sir, it's a state subject. But at the same time, we need to create a proper atmosphere. We need to create proper mindset among the people. The purpose of this book is to create that awareness among the people, arouse the consciousness for reforms. That is the purpose. So Prakash Singh's efforts are not going waste. They are having effect. The administrators at various levels, I suggest that they should read this book. Politicians also, and also the bureaucracy. And then try to do whatever they can at their level. Simply blaming one section here, politician, or the administrators, or the bureaucracy, or delays by judiciary, alone is not going to suffice. We need to really do introspection. Where we are lacking, why it's not happening. So we have to apportion the responsibilities at various levels and try to take correctives at the earliest. Otherwise, people slowly lose their confidence. It is quoted just now, the latest case of 3 states, police fighting among themselves, and a discussion in media. Such things are not good for a healthy system. India is definitely moving forward, undoubtedly. Moving faster also. Economic prosperity is coming. But at the same time, we should also work for happiness of the people. Happiness will come only when there is peace, when there is rule of law implemented and everybody follows the rules. Someone asked me, sir, can you answer in one line what is meant by Deshabhakti? I said, in one line. I said, everybody doing their duty is Deshabhakti. I said, if everybody does their duty, including citizens, then the country will definitely prosper. So most prerequisite for progress is the peace. Peace is prerequisite for progress. If you have tension, you cannot pay attention. It's very simple. So police, being the main force to maintain that peace, they need to be progressive, they need to be aggressive against the crime, and they need to be people friendly, they need to be sensitive, and they need to be neutral politically, but they need to be firm and aggressive as far as the crime is concerned. There have been attempts undoubtedly to introduce reforms over the years, but there is not much progress as expected. We should now give a renewed thrust for implementing reforms in police force. Police reforms, as a phrase, is an umbrella expression with a number of critical aspects. In brief, police reforms aim to transform the values, the culture, uphold rather than transform. Uphold the values, culture, policies and practice of police organizations. It deals with interface of the people with the public with a sense of accountability, while being transparently sensitive to the rule of law, democratic values, and human rights. I need to hardly emphasize that policing is very important to prevent and detect crime and to maintain law and order. In the wake of revolt in 1857, that is the first freedom movement, the Britishers brought this Police Act of 1861 with the prime aim of having an agency which would uphold their imperialistic interests. That was the purpose of creating this force. They raised a police force subservient to their interests and one which would carry out all their orders, right or wrong, sparing no thought to ethics or morality. During the freedom struggle, the police was mainly used to suppress and oppress our freedom fighters and also the revolutionaries. After independence, the role of police has to be redefined and the police training and orientation has to be radically different. Of course, it has changed to some extent. Over the years following independence, there were instances where the police force was perceived to be politicized with erosion in the values, objectives, and practice of police organizations across the country. There seems to have been some gap in the overall objective of the force and the way laws were enforced. Of course, the abuse and misuse of the police has reached its peak during the infamous emergency, when it was used with impunity to suppress human rights and imprisoned thousands of people, including all those political opponents of the ruling dispensation. When I was in jail, one of my professors also was brought in. I was wondering, this professor is a very simple man, very God-fearing, very humble. He comes to the class, takes his subject, and then you don't get involved in anything. Then I made inquiries informally, why this professor is there, and he used to sometimes weep also within the prison and saying that when are you going to be released? And some fellows, in order to this thing him, they used to say, no, there is no question of our going. She is not going to anybody. We'll be finished here only. So this man's worry used to be more this thing. So he used to come to me and then ask me. I said, don't worry, sir. There is movement going on in the country. One day or other, emergency will be lifted and all. After my inquiries, it's interesting to note that one day he offered lunch to some people who were wearing the saffron dress, and they were called as Ananda Margis at that time, those people. Just lunch. You do not know what is Ananda Marga also. He said Ananda Marga means we'll give Ananda. They are doing a good thing. So he just hosted lunch, that's all, nothing else. He was also arrested under Mesa. They said I invited Shri Prakash Narayan to the university, that's why I was also booked. But of course, that was a turning point in my life. That 17.5 months I spent in jail, that gave me a lot of understanding about public life and really made my determination strong. The setting up a police commission, National Police Commission in 1977, the first national commission after independence, marking a key step aiming to change India's large policing organization. The commission had then submitted reports with detailed proposals for police reforms. Taken together, these reports constituted the first thorough study and review of the police system in India, ranging from registering FIRs and jurisdictional issues to addressing complaints against police officials, especially those related to custodial deaths, rape, torture, and injuries, to providing necessary protection from injustice and exploitation to the people of weaker sections, to the enactment of regulatory laws, and having necessary guidelines in place for police reforms. To name only a few, the reports of the National Police Commission covered extensive ground in this domain. We need to work on these suggestions and usher in reforms in our police forces at individual and also at the institutional levels. Sporadic cases of custodial deaths, fake police encounters here and there, corruption, obscenity of neutrality, absence of neutrality, disregard of human rights and the rule of law have not only severely dented the image of police, but have made it a daunting task for the common man to visit a police station and lodge a complaint. Of course, now it's made mandatory. FIR has to be registered. We have to make policing more people-friendly and the law enforcement process easily understood and accessible. My dear friends, first thing, the reform has to be attitude, a receptive face in police station, a smiling, an affectionate response to the complaints of the people. That is what is required. So you need to change the attitude. You have to reorient them time and again, through refresh courses. You have to motivate them and change their attitude. That is what is more important according to me. Second one is that you need to increase the strength also. And the strength, I do not mean strengthening top heavy. This is a complaint against police system. Number of DGPs. There is one state, number of DGPs, DIGs, additional DIGs. But the strength of a police station, 1:7 to 1:14 and on, it is static. This is really a sad state of affairs. That requires reform. You need to strengthen the police force at the grassroots level. There is no need to have this many top heavy posts. I am very clear about it. Like having a chief minister, number of deputy chief ministers. Only they have title, nothing else. I don't know about perquisites, etc. You have to strengthen the police force at the grassroots level. the Supreme Court has given number of directions also. Those directions also has to be understood in proper perspective, and they should be implemented. The Government of India has also taken certain initiatives, including a project to decriminalize minor offences and violations under different laws. The government is also processing of enacting Criminal Procedure Identification Bill 2022. It seeks to update the Identification of the Prisoners Act 1920, a legislation passed more than 100 years ago. While the existing act covers fingerprints, footprints and photographs, the latest act would also authorize iris and retina scan, handwriting or any other examination referred to in relevant sections of the CRPC of convicts. In April 2016, the Prime Minister, as was mentioned, called for making the police a smart force, standing for force which is strict and sensitive, modern and mobile, alert and accountable, reliable and responsive, tech savvy and trained. I am happy to note that some of these measures have been initiated in this direction, but we need to do a lot more. This observation of the Prime Minister, every word has a larger sense. That has to be understood in proper sense. We are facing multitude of crimes in new domains such as cyber crimes, economic offences, and online frauds, which require special investigative expertise due to their sophisticated and often transboundary nature. We need to skill and upgrade our police forces to tackle these 21st century crimes. It is heartening to note that the government is also giving very high priority to greater use of technology in the day-to-day working of police. I am happy to learn that the Indian Police Foundation has been making efforts to realize the vision of a smart Indian police, especially by bringing internal reforms, technology adaptation, digital transformation, and training to improve the professional and ethical standards of police. Training at various levels, at various intervals is very much required because situation is changing. Two issues that need to be addressed on a war footing are filling up a huge number of vacancies in the police department and strengthening the police infrastructure in tune with requirements of the modern age policing. Housing of police personnel also calls for improvement also. You see the police quarters in certain states, horrible. There is also need for senior police officers to lead by example and ensure that the behavior of policemen towards the common man is courteous and friendly. A visit to police station should be a hassle-free experience for a person who goes there seeking help. Before concluding, let me pay my respect to policemen who died in the line of duty, who had laid down their lives battling terrorists, extremists, separatists, successionists, mafia, and all shades of lawless elements in different parts of the country. Some people suggest and also complain that there is too much political interference. I don't intend to disagree with that. That's an observation. But is it only political interference that is making the system to suffer and making ineffective and getting bad name? If you are honest, if you are sincere, if you are dynamic, what a politician can do? Maximum transfer. Maximum transfer, nothing else. This also has to be discussed and analyzed and understood by all people. If everybody is honest, then the government also of they don't have any other choice. So first and foremost thing is one officer who is known for toughness and integrity of late started getting so much criticism and flack from the people because of pressure. So then one day he met me. I told him, what is happening? He said, sir, I am also not happy. what is your advice? I told him, what advice I can give you? I am no more in politics. My advice for you is simple. Follow the constitution and conscience. That's all. That will solve your problems and you will get good sleep. He was happy. Initially, he couldn't understand what I meant. Later, he told me, sir, I am really happy to receive that advice. I'll try to follow it. Friends, as I told you, that this is an age of reformation, and we need to bring reforms in every sector. Even in political sector also, people has to select and elect political leaders by considering character, caliber, capacity and conduct. 4 C's. I repeat it wherever I go. But unfortunately, what is happening is certain people have replaced these 4 C's by other 4 C's. The other 4 C's are caste, community, cash and criminality. And at times they are getting advantage. So people also has to be really conscious about the need to select and elect good people. You deserve the people you elect, na? Simply voting for somebody and then lamenting later is not going to help. And also this anti-defection law has become a mockery. I told people who are all responsible, bring changes. It is not effective, it is defective. Defection has become of late affection with perfection. If you defect single, you are disqualified. If you do it on a wholesale scale, then it is allowed as per the law. In a democracy, one must have the right to change parties whenever you find the parties going against the principles. But you must leave the post which you got through that party. That is the basic responsibility. That will not happen by itself unless, in the present day, unless you bring reforms. And reforms also that people who are facing criminal cases, politicians particularly, officials, those cases should be disposed of at the earliest. Speedy judicial system. Number of years, they are just getting on from one court to other court. I don't know whether it will come to a conclusion in their lifetime. Even people changing parties, and it is challenged in court also. I have 2 instances, I don't want to name the people, get into controversy. They have completed their tenure, and they are about to complete their second tenure also. Still the case is pending. Delay, judicial delay also is causing problem. So judiciary also must introspect. Whatever the government has to do it. Filling up the vacancies. But at the same time, the people there who are there to give justice delivery, they should also act in a more responsive and responsible manner. And the legislatures also, they have to perform. And they have to discuss, debate and decide. But often disruption is taking place. Disruption, obstruction. This is another area about which people are very much concerned. I am the presiding officer of the house, upper house, House of Elders. Sometimes what is happening in the upper house is really disheartening, disgusting. Because people try to follow the parliament, the upper house and the legislature and all. So that way there is a need for reforms in every sector. We are mostly today focusing our attention on police reforms. We need to have structural changes also. It's a process. It's a continuing process. But what we need is that the governments at various levels, they should be alive to the reality and bring in the changes. For that, they need to have political will. Thank you very much, Prakash Singh, for giving me this opportunity. A progressive modern India must have a police force which meets the democratic aspiration of the people. That is my concluding word. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
I would now request Mr. Kapish Mehra, Managing Director, Rupa Publications India, to say a few words and propose the vote of thanks. Under Mr. Mehra's leadership, Rupa has been bringing out the finest books on a wide range of subjects. Mr. Kapish Mehra.
First of all, a very lovely good morning and thank you to the Honorable Vice President, distinguished panelists, the author Shri Prakash Singh ji. We all know there is a phrase called third time lucky, and Prakash Singh ji embodies that as far as we are concerned, because this is his third book with us. And I must report to you, ladies and gentlemen, that while as the first print run is out there in the market, we have had to reprint the book for the future launches, considering the kind of response it has got. So many congratulations, sir. And just to stretch on that point, I must say that while you did mention that you wrote this book because this continues to be a struggle and you think that you may not see the end of it, the uptake of the book and therefore your thoughts is so vehemently being welcomed that it is possible that you may see the end of it very soon, and I wish you all the very best for that. I'm no one to talk about police reforms. I think Kaushik and I are two people here who should refrain from talking about police for a variety of reasons. But like him, I have also had many interesting experiences. The most recent one was when I was entering the auditorium today. One gentleman at the gate very harshly said, show us the invite card. While I did take a few seconds to pop it up and show it to him, he brushed me aside and said, ye nahi hai. And the other gentleman, who was the other security guard, said, Arey sir, aap iska bura mat maniye, isne aaj chashma nahi lagaya. So there is, for every bad, there is a good. And I hope that such reform, whether it is an individual or in policy, does take place. And I wish Mr. Prakash Singh the very best. And thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for making time today on a Sunday morning. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the National Anthem. I'd like to request you to kindly remain seated after the National Anthem while the Honorable Vice President leaves the venue. Thank you.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे